Hugo. Just we're
There.
jumping in. This is Hugo. This is the one of the greatest podcasts you'll ever freaking hear about horses because it's about these stories. So he started to tell me about right before the recording started, but the recording's going. We're live. So
Hey, what's
where
up,
is this?
guys? It's
Yeah.
a pleasure. So right now I'm in Mascota, Jalisco. It's in the southern, southwest part of Mexico. It's
Okay.
about 3 hours away from Guadalajara, and now we're away from Puerto Vallarta. That's our closest big city. PV we call it. Pretty cool place. This is actually the Rio Sierra. It's all green. It's not like the desert, like a lot of people,
Okay.
picture where
Yeah.
they imagine Mexico is a fucking desert, but there's no way this is desert, man.
No.
This is pretty cool. Something else, man. So I came here after working for 5 years in Europe and Florida. Florida
Right.
was basically my vacation spot. That's where we would, do layovers after Europe. Um,
Okay.
yeah, I did a bunch of shows in Europe, all around Europe. I mean, all around, all of the good
Wow.
shows, the top shows, and
Like
I
what are
mean,
some of the names? Because I don't know them.
yeah, if we want to talk about big shows or where I lived, for example, the first time I got to Europe was with Laura Kraut. Laura Kraut is an
Okay.
Olympic rider. She's a female rider. So
Right.
she's a
Yeah.
big deal for American riding history, the American community, Americans in Europe, because she is very talented and she's one of those riders that got really adapted and she got really used to the European lifestyle. It's kind of like having an American soccer player in Europe playing in a big club. This is Laura Kraut. I mean, and her
Wow.
being a female, sorry, they have some fireworks here, but anyways, her herself being a female rider in Europe, you're competing against German, Dutch, Belgian
A lot
riders
of
who are very tall, big guys, big,
yeah.
super nice horses. Could be, in reality, the best horses are in Europe. So when you have someone like Laura Grau, who's tiny, she has really good sponsors, so she does have some good horses. But going to Europe with Laura Kraut was like going to Real Madrid in soccer, or going to Barcelona.
Wow.
It was a big
That's
deal,
incredible.
because she
Did
introduced
you
me
fly
to
with the horses or did you fly
no.
by?
And that's the cool thing about it. No, that time I didn't fly with the horses. That time I was the last one to stay at the barn at Wellington.
Oh wow.
So Mary Elizabeth, who's Laura Kraut's sister, she was the manager. She left behind Big Star, who is an Olympic gold medalist with Nick Skelton. They left Cedric, and they left four other horses that were client horses, really good client horses. And I mean, they wanted someone to be just on top of it, doing the right things and doing the proper work. Very
Yeah.
committed, because working in those kind of barns is not easy. There's a lot of pressure. There's a lot
High
of commitment,
maintenance. Yeah.
a lot of high maintenance. And so I
Yeah.
stayed behind with all these horses. There were like 8 horses. What they did was the first trip of horses, they were mostly horses that were going to start showing as soon as they got to Europe. And the other horses, the bigger named horses, they were sent off like 2 weeks after the first trip of horses left from Wellington. So I stayed behind with all the other horses, the second trip. I didn't
Okay.
fly with them, but I did stay there until all of them flew and
Yeah.
they got to Europe. Okay,
And I'm
and
sure
then
you've
they gave
flown
me.
with horses before, yeah?
Oh yes, that's actually part of the job. When you work with these top people, these top barns, they really do
Yeah.
expect you to have these qualities, these experiences, because they can't rely on someone that hasn't had an experience flying with the horse. It's not as easy as people think, and they actually do run some background checks, and you have to pass a couple of tests from the same airlines or the flying
Yeah.
association from I don't even know. Yeah, they do test you, which is and it's not
Like
just
what
like
a
physical tests, but they also have like paperwork.
oh yeah, there's
Sorry.
a like just a little to put it in perspective for people, it's essentially for even people in the industry, I was helping load some horses that were going to Paso Robles here close by, but
Yeah.
it's like what they had bought this Mexican horse that had been all over. Antonio Mauro had ridden it, like crazy
Yeah.
all over everywhere, like
Okay.
another big name. And so essentially, like, we're loading these horses, and I'm jokingly just kind of saying, like, man, this guy's traveled more than I have. Like, he's got more stamps in his passport than I have, and I've
Yeah.
traveled for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
I've traveled all on my own, in my own
Yeah.
right. But this just, he's a beautiful fucking stud horse that just, you can tell when you know what's going on. You can tell, like, wow, this amateur is like really getting a prize in this horse, because she's good. She's jumping, meter maybe, you know, and it's like this horse is just killing it, just
Yeah.
kill in its later years, and that's a whole other topic about. But this groom is just like, nah, and he's like kind of like brushing me off, and then finally, the next day he's like, dude, yeah, you were right. Like, this horse has traveled all over, and his brother had to tell him,
Yeah.
because
He
that's
actually
how
has
much
it.
people don't think.
Yeah, and that that's a little culture shock. For example, like
Yeah, I guess that's a good way to put it, because it is a
travel.
culture, right? We have a
It's a
culture.
culture shock. Yeah, even in the horse world, like bringing top horses from that side of the world for these elder riders or riders who have
Yeah,
the money to buy these kind of horses. Yet the
yeah.
people who take care of these horses, they don't quite understand what they mean on that other side of that world. Like having a top horse many times in the U.S. is the worst mistake riders make. Why? The
Mm.
horses start getting fat. They become unfit. They become weak for some reason. Horses in America, when they come from Europe, they seem to get weaker. I'm not sure if it's the diets. I'm not sure if it's the vets. I'm not sure if it's just the weather,
Yeah,
the system,
yeah.
the way things run. But their levels do get lower, and they're not as great as they are in Europe. And that's something that's culturally shocking, because you have to know how to get used to that kind of stuff, that kind of environment. Just because it affects horses, don't think it's not going to affect you, because it also does affect you. When
Mm-hmm.
a groom from this side of the world goes to Europe, oh man, they go from having this ego to having this tiny of an ego. They're like, oh, oh, this is the real deal. And that's something that I wish a lot of
Yeah.
the grooms from this side of the world could experience too, because a lot of the times I think they're very spoiled, but also it's the way they care for horses, and their system is it's very good and it's very successful. However, just being spoiled is not going to bring success to a barn. You need a little bit of adrenaline. You need that like sportsmanship. You need to be like a professional. Like,
Yeah.
don't just sit there. Don't just sit around. Like, keep moving. Same with their horses. Have them moving. Have them constantly working out different ways. Mountains, hills, running, galloping, and that is something cool that I learned from Europe. That like normal very, how do you say it, natural horsemanship type of world that they live in. A lot of the Swiss riders, man, they lived in hill valleys and just farms and uphills and just a lot of mountains and creeks and rivers, and it was just so natural, man. But
Yeah.
they used all this in their advantage, man. They would ride these horses around all of these places, so the horses were
Yeah.
not scared at all of any jumps, fences, natural fences. And that's why Steve Gerdadka, I did work at his stables. He's probably one of the world's top 5 riders in history. Why? Because he's so successful, Olympic medalist, like not just once, many times, world champion many times. You name it, he's won it all. He's won it all. And key to that is being a natural horseman, not pushing horses and not forcing something that's not, here in America, everyone wants to push their horses. They want them, super fat, super well fed, very spoiled, 20 carats a day.
Yeah.
That's just, it kind of ruins the sportsmanship
To
in
your
horses.
point, yeah, to the rooting, the sportsmanship, and the carrots, is specific, not carrots specifically, but just like treat
Treats.
mentality. Yeah, the
Yes.
mentality of treats. Look, I think people are under a confusion where essentially it's like, yeah, salud. Essentially,
Cheers.
people, yeah, people think, the motivation of the horse is the treat. When the motivation of the horse is actually your attention, it's actually your love and compassion and everything you're doing for it, like, and when you're walking up and down the barn aisle, like it'll feel that rhythm that you're getting into. And I know you know this, but for people who are listening, and even people who are listening who know this, visit it again, rethink it, and understand, how much of their life is actually you, not the
Yeah.
treat, not the hay, not the anything, you know. And
Yeah.
that's why everybody like loves that, and it's such an iconic scene when you see the Olympic rider going around in his horse, and you see him
Yeah.
patting him on the neck and everything, and the horse is like appreciating him and everything. If it is a
Yeah.
true bond, you do see that, and all humans will recognize that because it's ancient. It's not just a modern thing. This is an ancient thing.
No. A
Ancient, ancient,
thousand
ancient.
years. We have
Hello,
More,
a thousand
gentlemen.
more.
years
Hey, hello. I'm
domesticating the
here.
horse. Yeah.
Hey,
So
enter a
What's
thousand years of Edgar right here. What's
many.
up?
a couple things to get ready for? Anyways, I'm here. Cheers, gentlemen. I'm
Cheers, man.
listening
Oh
in,
yeah.
Salud.
so don't think I'm in the conversation.
No, yeah.
That's a
What do you got to say? Like to catch us up, everybody. This is Edgar Padilla.
Mhm.
What's going on?
guys. Same old. Living the dream. Can't complain.
Victoria.
Wow. No, yeah. Bubbly. I'm in a 90-day sobriety test or whatever you want to call it, challenge.
Challenge.
Yeah, 90 days challenge.
Then what are you challenging? Your
Myself,
consumption of alcohol.
my liver is
I
getting
love it.
healthy, right?
Oh, that's good. That's good. Something you need a break sometimes here and then. It's
Yeah, a
good to
little
take.
break,
Definitely.
some
Yeah.
bubbly. Anyways, yeah, I'm listening in. You guys, I mean, one of the things that I find like so cool and so like exciting is the time that we're living now with social media playing such a huge role in connecting people and especially giving voice to the people that didn't have a voice before, like our parents, for example, who were
Oh
going through the
gosh.
struggle. And now us as a that generation that now has the ability to express and to bring all these notions together. I find it really an opportunity. So I'm glad you guys are here. I'm glad you guys are really expressing kind of your concerns and also bringing light to a lot of these a lot of the experiences that a lot of people don't like, can't even imagine. Like a lot of our clients, a lot of the owners and trainers sometimes don't really get to see our perspective as Mexican American, first generation. We're here, we've experienced it. So I'm loving what I'm hearing.
Yeah, dude. Cheers.
Cheers, cheers, cheers.
Mm.
So yeah,
Ah.
Cheers.
you guys look
But
healthy.
yeah. So Hugo, you were saying basically, some of your background and stuff, but you were getting into I think what you're doing there in Mascota right now.
Yeah. The thing about the background is it's just so much, man, that I would have to.
Some people have a hard
I
time
don't know.
quantifying that too, right? Like I
Yeah,
shot
and
my first horse
that's
at 14, right? Like the first time I was, that's the
yeah.
kind
So
of like,
that's you have to go back like 20 years and shit. It's not easy, but
yeah.
I'll start with the basics, like when I started, where I'm at right now, and what I think where I want to be in 5-10 years.
Nice.
So first off, my dad, his name's Hugo as well. My dad worked for George Morris. He actually moved to
Dude, I know that
New
guy
Jersey.
well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he
He's
moved to.
wow. Your dad. Yes, ¿cómo se llama? ¿Cómo te
Yeah,
apellidas?
Rangel. Maybe
Rangel.
maybe you know
Yeah,
Rangel.
maybe.
Maybe you
Maybe I'll
know
have
him.
to ask
Yeah.
my dad.
Oh, for sure. Your dad, if he was around, he knows my dad. I know he's one of the
Dude, that'd be so
pioneers,
great.
but the very first pioneer of all the people, of all the Mexicans that migrated to New Jersey to Hunterdon was actually Eddie's uncle. His name was
Jose
Chema?
Padilla.
Jose
Chema,
Padilla,
Jose.
Chema. He's known as Jose Chema Padilla. He's the pioneer. He's the one that started taking people from Mexico to New Jersey because George Morris, who he was his groom for the longest time, and he took care of one of his most successful horses. I forget the name of the horse.
And, you'll have to ask me.
Was it Rio? No.
Let me see. Now Rio. Oh,
I don't know. He had Rio.
I can look it up.
Yeah, well, he had one of his top horses taken care by Eddie's uncle. And my father was his assistant. Again, back in the days, they used a lot of, special secret ways of making horses jump higher,
Yeah.
It was very natural. And the competitions were not as tight and as technical as they are now. Now there are many reasons why, there are always so many vet checks, vets coming around to your aisle, just making sure nothing is out of control, because that's when magic happens, and a lot of the times it happens during night check or, 3 hours before, the horses go into the ring. But, that's just history, So anyways, my dad was his assistant, Eddie's uncle's assistant, and they were actually grooms of George Morris. And something I want to mention right here is the fact that Eddie's uncle was the only guy in the whole show jumping community allowed to give George Morris a leg up. I mean, this was history, and a lot of the grooms, a lot of the people knew this. He was the only one allowed to give George Morris a leg up. Anyone else cannot touch his legs. I mean, that was just it. That was George Morris. I'm good friends with George Morris, because, we go back to all of this, Hunterdon,
I'm sure.
our family, our uncles, a lot of people. So his favorite beer is Heineken. So if you ever, have the opportunity to talk to him, tell him Hugo said what's up, and just buy him a Heineken. He's going to love you. That's how that's George Morris. And so,
he used to come and give clinics over at because I'm from the California coast, so West Coast, and basically he come give clinics and just ruin these girls,
George,
ruin them, dude.
George,
it was so great because he's giving them a dose of reality. The shit that he's telling them is the most real shit you could ever hear from a horsemanship perspective. That's going to make you a better horseman, because it's not about you, it's about the horse. And when anybody who's done anything with horses in a way where they're actually trying to accomplish something, you get that pretty quick. It's not about you, it's about what's going on, so that's fucking great. I love that George Morris is one of the first things you fucking bring up. I love
George Morris.
that guy.
So I looked up the horse was Rio. You're right. In the 1980s,
nice.
in the 1980s, Morris began competing internationally against for a brief period. He broke his femur in a fall in 1986 and broke his leg
he did.
a year later.
He compitió, siguió compitiendo.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But I have a crazy story about, crazy injuries like that. But anyways, I'm going to keep moving on. Okay. Yeah. So George Morris and Rio. Rio is the horse that made your uncle famous, Eddie. And they actually won a what is that Grand Prix they had in the Buccaneer Stadium? The American Invitational. Okay. So George Morris won an American Invitational, and Eddie's uncle was taking care of that horse. Now, George Morris, at that time, he tipped Eddie's uncle $4,000, $5,000. And that's how Eddie's uncle bought his first house here in Mascota, thanks to that Grand Prix win. Yeah, that's why that house has a lot of history. No one touches that house. That's crazy. So even there's even property here related to that horse, Rio, because he won an American Invitational at the Buccaneer Stadium. Yeah. So then, and there's much more, man. I mean, Eddie's family, believe it or not, man, they have so much history in France because they also worked for Henri and Katie Prudent. They are a French-American family, very successful, and Eddie grew up with them. And man, I didn't. There was never a time where we had a bad experience with Katie and Henri Prudent. I mean, they were training some of the richest clients at the moment, and they would talk to Eddie, man, like he was one of their own. They knew me because of Eddie, and they were always very nice and kind because of that. And I was also very good friends with Adam. Adam Proudhon is Katie Proudhon and Henri Proudhon's son. We were very good friends, very cool people, but Eddie was just like
So
part
cool.
of the family, you know, very cool.
The
we grew up
relationships. Huh?
Coming from a place like Virginia, where there's a lot of, and I hate to say it, but there is a lot of racism, a lot of discrimination still in Virginia. All these American families, you know, they accepted his family like one of theirs. You know, even, you know, considering the
cool.
fact that they are Mexican, you know, they were always very accepted by the American community. They never had any conflicts with like all the clients or any of the clients at all. And that's even why Alice and Firestone trusted Eddie's mom in taking care of their children. I mean, so much happened because, you know, Allison was very successful in writing. There came a point where she just, you know, she stumbled a bit. A lot of things happened, just like in so many show jumping barns and stables and riders, you know, because a lot of things that that happen to these riders, people don't realize, you know, that they also have a personal lifestyle. They have a lifestyle that they want to live. But due to the fact that show jumping it's a very tough environment, very competitive. It's very drilling. I compare a lot to like the Formula One.
Yeah,
because you never stop traveling. You never stop traveling.
Same thing.
You need your
I
string
tell
of
people
horses.
it's a fucking crazy circus. It's like a super rich fucking circus.
It's the richest sport. Yeah, it's Formula One and show jumping. You have your engineers. Your engineers they're your grooms. And then behind your engineers,
make the same comparison. That's so crazy. I love that. I love
the richest sport, and man, and it's just so cool that, you know, our families, some way or another, they have been part of this whole process of the American the evolution of show jumping. Our families, our Mexican Americans families, have been part of this evolution of show jumping, and it's something we should feel really proud of, because we have a lot of grassroots and we have a lot of connection with this show jumping world. And, you know, I really think we should feel more proud, and you know, there's a lot of stigma, a lot of, you know, discrimination sometimes between the grooms and the clients, but rather being, you know, having a lot of more conflict, we should actually get together and become together and start uniting, because it's so cool, man, when you go to Europe with a Mexican groom and an American rider, and you have the best time of your life, because the American rider, man, they feel so connected to the Mexican grooms in Europe, because that's the closest they have to home. And when you see that bond, that connection with the grooms and the American riders in Europe, you're like, damn, I feel proud, man. I'm Mexican American. And in the show jumping industry, Mexicans and Americans is not a new thing, man. We go way back. Besides, we have so much history. That should be like something we should work on. And our show jumping industry, like our grooms in the continent, we should start working or finding a way to work with the Americans and the Mexicans and the Canadians. We have really good horses.
See, hey, we got to bring them to the cookout, you know, like to the stall, you know, where we're cooking, you know. We're always like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's kind of like.
Let me tell you, man. Back in the day, I was 2-3 years old, cleaning trunks, and I remember that vibe. And I know, Hugo, you do too. That whole vibe of.
I grew up in that environment. Yeah.
It didn't matter if you were the owner, if you were some billionaire that was just, you know. You know, it didn't matter. You were amongst all, and we were eating whatever.
Yeah.
There was no phones back in the. Obviously, there was no distractions, and we all convivíamos juntos. You know, there was that camaraderie. Yeah, it was beautiful. It was beautiful. So
my dad's mentor, one of my dad's mentors, he was famous because he Jack Miller. He did a lot of shows, like was a horse show jumping shoers who just sat on a lot of horse shows. So it was really good at hunters and jumpers to get them do what they do. But the thing that he would do was he'd cook a fucking tri-tip, and he'd cut it up, and he'd have people coming by, like you said, billionaires, millionaires, you know, sometimes trillionaires, you know, walking over their daughters, their daughters, their sons who are into this shit, like the Formula One stuff, because that all, eso todo tiene su etapa. Like there's 19-year-old kids, 16-year-old kids, and their little mini Formula One racers working their way up. Same as there's the meter kids. There's the kid. Then
meter
there's the kids who are
30,
doing
meter
meter 20,
40s, meter 50s,
meter 50s. But sometimes you get that kid who's like supposed to be doing like a meter, but she or he is actually doing meter 40, and this kid's like got something, and there's this connection with the horse, and blah, blah, blah. And, there's like these narratives and these stories, like you're saying, Hugo, you keep saying like, oh man, there's so many more stories. And that's why I'm so excited to do these podcasts and take advantage of this Zoom and this technology we have today to tell these stories and get them recorded, because they really are kind of sometimes like a book, like a fantasy.
Like the one time, so here in Mascota, where we're from, thank God, man, our people are very committed, especially to this world, the horse world. We have a lot of grooms, but it's been dying, but we still have some grooms. And there was a time when I was working for Laura, and I was in Fontainebleau. Fontainebleau is like the horse capital of France. I mean, every place in France, they call it the horse capital of France, but they love horses in France.
La mejor torta aquí.
Everywhere you go in France, it's the capital of the horse, and they love it. But it's cool. But in Fontainebleau, they have a castle, and we happened to drop off the horses at the stables there in Fontainebleau. We set up everything, the stables, all we needed, we set it up. And then we were walking back to our hotel. I had two English drivers. It was Les, and the other one was Will. Les was a very cool driver, man. He was just the most amazing English driver, English friend, English homie. I called him my homie because he was so cool, so genuine,
So
very
cool.
English, but just the best time. I had the best time in England thanks to this guy, Les. So,
cool.
we were walking on the side of a big avenue in France, in Fontainebleau. It was about 2 minutes from the castle. All of a sudden, man, out of nowhere, we just hear a car that was just going freaking nuts, man, honking on the car, beep, 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 like nuts. I mean, he was going crazy. We're like, shit. Hey, I was like, yo, Les, I think they're calling you, man. I think they're your bitches. I was just playing around, I was like, hey, your bitches, Les. He was like, no, Hugo, none of that, man. I have my ladies in England. I was like, nah, are you sure, Les? Well, the guy turned around and he kept honking again. He made a U-turn. He came back the other direction and started honking.
Oh, wow.
Even harder, man. As he was getting closer, he was honking nonstop. I mean, we were like, okay, yo, something's going on. This is not normal. All of a sudden, man, I see a guy, sticking his head out of the window, because over there in England, the steering wheel is on the right side. If you're from England, I mean, English cars, the steering wheel is on the right side. So there was Jerry Camberos. Jerry Camberos is actually a guy from Mexico, from Mascota, who also left during my dad's time. Yeah. And he was grooming for not Georgina, Katie Prudent and Barbara Bancroft. So, I mean, having so many people in the whole wide world, man, two people, he knew me as a child, not as an older person. He recognized me as I was walking on a fucking avenue in France, in Fontainebleau, at a horse show. He knew that I was traveling, but he didn't know I was there in Fontainebleau. Man, it was just so cool, man, having a Mexican guy honking at you, screaming, cabrón, cuate, cuate, cuate. The drivers were like, yo, that's crazy. It was my dad and Eddie's friend. And after like years, man, like 10, 15 years, so not like seeing Jerry Camberos, he's just popped in France. And I'm like, whoa, that's fucking awesome, man. Like, what the hell? That's freaking awesome. Another thing, when I was in France and I was in Chantilly, some people knew that there was a Mexican guy. I mean, because when you're Mexican, bro, and you go to Europe, everyone knows that there's a Mexican. They love us. They know we drink, that we love to party. They know we love tequila, and they're always looking for us to party and just have a good time. Then a good laugh too. So in Chantilly, another guy that's the son of a guy that's from here. He's a carpenter, Tito Uribe. He's a carpenter here in the town, and he has a son who was born in the U.S. So his son was in Chantilly. When I was passing by a tent, I see this guy standing like just outside the tent, like just leaning back. I don't know what he was doing, but he was just leaning back. And he stares at me. He's like, God, what the hell is going on? And I look at him like, yeah, what's up, man? Where are you from? He's like, pinche cuate. And I'm like, what? That's crazy. How do you know me, man? He's like, yo, soy hijo de Tito de Mascota. And I'm like, what? That's nuts, man. In France, like, I don't know, we're in Chantilly in a global champions tour in Chantilly, the biggest grass field in France, where what's his name? They have his castle. The French. What's his name?
Look it up on Google. Hold on.
Napoleon. His castle in Chantilly, where he had his boxes for his horses and stuff. That's where they have the show. Wow. So there we were, and I mean, out of so many places in the whole wide world, it happened to me that in France, I always ended up meeting with people from Mascota, my town. Bro, that's not normal. Like, that's just how crazy it gets with Mexican people. Out of nowhere, a Mexican from Mascota, not like Sonora, Tijuana, from Mascota in France. That was just shocking, man. And it was so cool. I mean, seeing Mexican people also in Europe, man, that's just so cool. Because there's a strong connection within our people. There's just, I can't explain it. You just have to go to Europe and see it for yourself.
I think that can happen. I mean, that's incredible that happened in France. But I think we've all had those moments where sometimes we feel like we're so far away from home. It feels like it's just, you know, you're somewhere like outside of this universe, really, like just doing your thing.
Another dimension.
And then, yeah, exactly. And then all of a sudden there's that God wink, you know, you see somebody pass by that's not just from Mexico, that's not just in this sport, but somebody that is so relatable to you because he's from your hometown that lives, you know, I don't know, a block away from where you grew up in. Those moments are incredible. And I think that's what our sport does to bring all of us in a way. It's like our own small little community. That's
heavy.
Yeah. Can you see me?
No. I mean, it's heavy. It's heavy. The amount of validation that I get for sure from just being at the horse shows and people being like, "Yo, what's up?" Blah blah.
It's really
it's like walking through a town that that people know you.
That's crazy, man. I didn't know that's.
There's a lot of history too within the Mexican community and the American show jumping community. I mean, we go back to like the 1970s, even up to like the 1940s, 1970s. What a lot of people don't know is that George Morris, his equitation, his writing comes from another Mexican writer, another Mexican general. His name was actually Humberto Mariles. This is what people don't know. Back in, I think it was 1944, 1945, around that time. The Olympics were in England. The show jumping was going on at the Wimbledon Stadium. Yep. And the general, Humberto Mariles, search it up, man. This is real Mexican history.
Yeah.
Humberto Mariles had a blind horse. You know, he found him in a mountain. I don't know where in Mexico, but he just found a random horse and he said, "This is the one." And man, I mean, he made that horse jump. And that's actually when the proper show jumping style of riding, the 2-point, it was actually influenced by this Mexican general, Humberto Mariles. Wow. There was an Italian rider who came up with the 2-point style of riding. However, it was Humberto Mariles who gave it a bit more of a style to the 2-point. It wasn't just finding your 2 point. It was giving yourself a little bit more of like a good equitation, a way to sit back on your horse and in a good way to make yourself look good. Not just 2 point, but dirty and messy like the Italians. This guy was just very, very natural, and he was the one that actually trained George Morris. You guys can even ask George Morris. Whenever you see George Morris, ask him, who is Humberto Mariles? There was a time I was talking with George Morris. There was a time I was talking with George Morris about this guy, and George Morris was very upset. He said, Hugo, one of my biggest disappointments about the Mexican riders and the Mexican community is that they had one of the best riders in history, in show jumping history, but they don't accept them as such. They see me as like a top rider, a genius, and whatever. But Mexico has had a top amazing rider, better than myself and better than any rider here at the moment, Humberto Mariles. He went to train with him. George Morris went to train with him when he was in his early teens. He was a teenager. I think he was 15, 16. He came to Mexico City to work with Humberto Mariles. Now, I asked him, so how did you train? What was the lifestyle like back in the days? Like, what did you do? It's not like now in the days where you have a rider who gets a Hummer or a super fancy car. They drive into the stables. Their horses are, ready to get ridden. Yeah, they're completely ready. And the essentials, the basics are, left out. We don't know how to tack up horses anymore. We don't know how to clean a stall. Back in the days, George Morris says that the first thing they would do was clean their stalls, tack up their own horses. If they would eat breakfast, a lot of the times they wouldn't let them eat breakfast, because that was part of, getting fit. When they would eat breakfast, they would give them huevos rancheros con frijoles and coffee. That was your breakfast, and that was all you would get. I mean, you were spoiled if you even got breakfast, because some of the times they said, no breakfast today. You are on a diet. You only get dinner. And he said, they made us tough. They made us, man up, and that's why George Morris has become or was one of the best successful, riders, thanks to this Mexican general, which a lot of people don't even know about. Search it up. Humberto Mariles with an H.
Real Chihuahua. He was born June 13, 1913. So he died in France, actually, at the age of 59 in Paris.
Yeah, they shot him. I'll tell you this story, man, because I'm really good friends with the son. I'm one of the very few people that always talks about him because George Morris, the one time I spoke to him, George was like, please, talk about it. So whenever I have a chance to speak about Humberto Mariles, I do it. And his son found out I was doing this. He called me one time and I was like, Humberto Mariles. I was like, God, he's dead. What the hell is this? Yeah. It was a little scary, but his son was like, hey, Hugo, me llamó tal persona, me dijo que hablaste de mi papá en un artículo. Güey, te quiero agradecer. El día que vengas a la Ciudad de México, búscame. Porque yo también, a lot of the times I go to Mexico City because we have a Globo there. And Campo Marte, it's where we have our military base for the equine soldiers. So it was just, shocking and upsetting when George told me about this general. Shocking because I was like, I never expected, honestly, as a Mexican, how they downgrade us and how they make us think, Mexico is just poor, weak. You guys are not good at anything, sports, I was shocked that we had a person. Humberto Mariles is not just a general, or he wasn't just the teacher of George Morris or the trainer of George Morris. He also won, I believe, 2 or 3 gold medals during those Olympics. Eddie, can you?
He won. So he competed in 1948, 1952, and 1956. Wow! And also in Pan American Games, he won a team gold medal in show jumping in 1955.
Pesado.
Yeah, I mean, now when we talk about Nick Skelton, who only has 1 gold medal, I mean, everyone's like, wow, it's Nick Skelton. But hey, we have someone that's just as amazing as Nick Skelton, and his name is Humberto Mariles, and he's Mexican. That's
so cool.
Amazing, man. That's cool. I mean, I did work with Nick Skelton myself too. I took care of Big Star, And I mean, just working with that guy was also a whole nother level. It was a whole nother level. And as a Mexican working for an English writer and for a Spanish writer, I mean, it's not easy. But like I said, it's like, a Mexican soccer player going to Real Madrid or Barcelona. And
Yeah.
man, it was just an amazing experience. And I cannot thank them enough. I always tell all my friends, all the people, that if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be the guy I am now. Not just in the horse world, but also like a civilian, a normal citizen. When you grow up in that world, you realize that you can become a very good top professional in any sport, in any area. And if you stick to those rules, if you stick to that, how do I say it? Being a true professional, if you follow those how do you call it? It's like that professional world. If you stick to that, man, you can be really
It's
successful.
a code.
You have to, the codes, the discipline, the ethics.
The
I mean, the
creed.
way you even speak to people, the way you speak to kids, the way you motivate people, and the way you are so genuine and so kind and good, and sometimes even the character being mean to people is also part of it. If you stick to those codes, man, you can be successful in anything you do in life. I mean, that to me was the best experience of my life.
I love it. I love it. So that's some of the history. Now, what's going on in like today's world of Hugo?
Oh, so this past November, I ended up in Switzerland. I was working for Paris Allen and Martin Fuchs. Martin Fuchs is the number 2 rider in the world. I think at the moment
Oh, cool.
he's number 4th rider in the world. And with whom I was friends, like Eddie said, the kind of people would sit next to, eat barbecue, have a barbecue, have some
Yeah.
steak, I don't know, whatever. And they called me up. She was in Switzerland. She called me up. She was like, Hugo, like, I need help. Can you fly over? It would be cool if like you help me out. And, we have a little project going on. And I said, yeah, cool. So I got there and I ended up working for Martin Fuchs, which is her boyfriend. He saw me and he was like, I need this guy. I mean, at the moment, he was doing good. He needed proper care for his horses. Someone that knows what he's doing, And when you're trilingual, I speak 3 languages, English, French, and Spanish. Everything is very smooth. Everything is very easygoing. Everyone's happy. We're always smiling, just having a good fucking time. When you have a good time, man, results kick in. I mean, they just come in first place, second place. You start placing, and it's just
I love it.
genuine and very cool, man. And we had that very good bond, me and Martin Fuchs. But then I got to the point where I said, you know what? I was getting tired already of what this show jumping has turned into. Then I ended up going to the top 10, the Rolex top 10 in Geneva with Alexander Smith, who is Spencer Smith's sister. Spencer Smith is the New York Empire U21 rider from the Global Champions Tour. So, I mean, these guys have the money, they have the resources, they have the horses. Their parents train about like 200 horses with 200 clients in Florida. It's one of the biggest barns that they have in the whole Wellington. It's Ashford Farms. You remember that barn, Eddie?
Yes, sir. I do.
Okay, Ashford. So there I ended up my grooming career. I said, you know what? I did the top 10. I think I'm done. I've done it all. I mean, experiencing the top 10, the Rolex top 10 in Geneva, that was like going to the Olympics. You're with the best riders in the world, the best grooms in the world. You have cameras all over, exposure to all, all of Europe knew that you were there, and it's just cool.
For sure.
You have followers on Instagram, TikTok, Tinder. I mean, you name it. There were always people following
like you said, Formula One.
Yeah, and you become popular amongst all the people in the community and outside the community. And I got tired, man. I said, you know what? I think I'm going to take a break. I need to go back home. I need to figure out. I came to Mexico, and this is where I'm at now. I'm in Mascota, Jalisco. I'm training kids. I teach kids at the proper equitation, riding, Western, Mexican, show jumping, and a bit of everything, but the proper riding ways. As a kid, I did have some really cool, very good teachers too. Helen McNaught,
Mm.
Lucas Salario, Guma, Richard Padilla, some really good trainers, people committed to the sport. So I think now it's my turn. It's my time to help kids out in my community. As all these other riders, being in a world that show jumping is, there's a lot to pay for those classes, but these riders and grooms and assistant trainers, they were very kind to always support us and let us ride for free. We would get free lessons, and now
That's
I'm
cool.
trying to pay it back to my community, or pay back to, I don't know, the universe, by helping my community, I'm sorry, and teaching kids for free. I help a lot of handicapped people, kids that don't have any resources or ways of riding horses. So it's what I do now. I also rescue horses. I have an association where we rescue horses. Me and my brother,
Oh, wow.
we have a farm where we rescue them.
What's it called?
We fix them. The granja, we call it a farm. We call it Granja Paz Maria, and we actually have a TikTok page that's called Escuela de Monta. That's just how it sounds, Escuela de Monta. You can find us
We'll
on
put it in
TikTok,
the.
and yeah. And there you can follow up with all the kids that I train, the horses that I have.
Wow.
It kind of helps you see and learn what we do. I give tips to people, riders, and you can check it out for yourself. But yeah, at the moment,
Yeah,
that's what I do.
Yeah, what
Taking
we'll
a
do
break
is
from grooming, and
we'll put it in the
we'll put all
description.
we'll put on the description, and we'll put a link so people can just click on it. And yeah, you're also doing tours, right? You guys have
yeah,
a
I do.
new.
Yeah, it's a new business we have here. We're the first ones. There's never been that kind of stuff here. So we
Okay,
have about
that's
11 up
good.
to 13 horses to ride around. Really
Hell
cool
yeah.
tours because it's all organic, very cool. Sierra, mountains, rivers. You get to experience it all. And it's just cool. Mascota in Mexico was built, to ride around in horses and not cars. So it's a really cool experience. It's an awesome place.
Fuck
Yeah,
yeah.
man.
Yeah, so
I
I'll
want to
add that to
go.
the description. And yeah, well,
Come,
thank
bro.
you
It's a cool place.
for coming through. We're gonna have to do a
Uh-huh.
lot of more of these podcasts because there's a lot of stories. There's still a lot to
Oh, I
unpack.
have so much, man. Yeah. Like the big change, I think, from the 90s and even the early 2000s up until now, there has been a big change. I think we should, talk a little bit about that too, because it's very important
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
talk about what's good and what's bad about this whole change. There are some good things, but there are some very bad things. That's, a little bit of a shock, considering we come from like a very old school way of show jumping.
Yeah. Yeah. I was gonna actually ask you, because we are, like Ed, you're saying. So essentially, what are some of the things or nuggets you would pass on to like a new horse owner, somebody who just, and this is kind of the thing, right? Like, it's a person that has worked all their life to make this dream come true, and
Mhm.
now they've made their dream come true, and they've got this horse, and they've been taking lessons and all of this stuff. Um, what? Because that's really the disconnect. It's these people have kind of the industry has kind of gotten to a place where the horse needs to get fixed instead of the horse needs to get healed,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Where
Yeah,
so
that's exactly something I was talking about in the very beginning. Yeah. My tips: when you're gonna buy a horse, don't buy them because they're successful, like on the other side of the world. Don't buy them because you see them on magazines, pictures, posters, or because you follow them on YouTube. You know, this amazing rider you follow, he rides this horse. Don't buy a horse that's not suitable for you. Find the proper horse. There are many horses here that you can help heal, and they can help you become a better rider. And that's where I think we're making the biggest mistakes. You know, we're always trying to find that next superstar, that next top horse, but we can't even jump a meter 40 without having 10 rails down. You know, so let's be realistic. Let's be honest. Let's be sincere within ourselves and accept the fact that we're not all superstars like we think we are. You know, there are some very good riders, but they're riding like 10, 14, 15 horses a day versus us in America where we're riding 2 or 3 horses. Yeah. I mean, you're right. You're right.
Well, I mean, that's where I think also adding to your point, like what you're saying is like the prestige of riding a horse or jumping a jump or doing some equitation or making him do a lateral or a pee-off or whatever, whatever you're doing, slide, if you're sliding him. First of all, make sure your horse is fit for the job. Second of all, make sure the horse, or third, make sure you're fit for the horse. First is the horse for the job, then you for the horse. But it's like all of it has now built on this prestige of like, you're going to be on the magazine, you're going to get your photo taken, you're going to get this. When the way we grew up, what the prestige was, I can, I jumped a meter 40 once. It was crazy, like people used to understand that. Now it's like, oh yeah, I have a meter 40 horse. I have 3 meter 40 horses. And it's like, well, you didn't make that horse jump a meter 40.
Yeah.
That horse jumps your ass a meter 40. There's a difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the difference is we're watching horses take people over jumps instead of what we used to watch, which was this like
the main issue there, what's causing this, and I hate to say it, the sport is becoming an amateur sport. You have more amateurs now than professionals.
And we can train for that. It's just that we need to market it correctly, and it needs to be, the story needs to be true. Or else you just get bitter people, and you have the turnover rate in this industry is so mind-blowing.
But that's what's causing, I'm not sure if you guys have noticed, but there's a big problem right now with American top riders and top horses. We don't have a good team. We don't have a team for a Nations Cup final. We don't have one. The U.S. does not have a top U.S. Nations Cup final team. I mean, we don't. Let's be honest. So what's been happening? Well, it's been happening that for about 10 years or maybe 15 years, a lot of the trainers they have been, starting to get used to charging more money for these top clients. So it's a money problem. It's an issue. What happens? All these top kids, all these top super millionaires, they're hiring these professionals to come and teach their children, just to teach them, not to make them professionals. And that's the issue, that these trainers are getting paid to teach them, not to train them to become professionals. And they keep
to add to your point, to add to your point, the little schools that my dad raised me, all the horses that I was allowed to shoe and trim and do most of the work on were school horses. He would shoe all the top horses, the high jumpers, he would do all that shit. But man, those school horses, you don't see them anymore. You just don't, because honestly, the shoeing has changed, the ideologies got put in a box, and now you have from this school, when guys were just shoeing horses, we're just training horses, we're doing things that people have done for centuries, and it doesn't need to be reinvented. It just needs to be done right, and you can produce amazing things. But if anybody listening right now wants to start a little school anywhere in California, you will have so much business, you won't know what to do with 4 medium horses, 5 medium horses, and 1 arena and a house. you could have those horses, you could be making so much money, but people don't think like that. Like you said, todos quieren el magazine.
Yep.
Nobody wants the fulfillment of like Posey and Sam and Roxy. You know, esos cabrones que te pagan every single day. They pay you.
Yep.
You know, people don't want that.
Yeah.
So what needs to change? Is it the narrative? Is it the marketing?
Um, Sadly, I have to say it as you know, as sad as it sounds, but you know, it's the reality. We have to go back to our roots, to our grassroots, and that's why I'm
Yeah.
here. I'm back in Mexico. I think I'm
Yeah.
gonna have to teach another generation of kids like our parents, so they can be the next
Yeah.
ones that go to those countries, and so they can become that other generation that moved out from Mexico to work in the horse world. You know, even in Europe, man, Europe is becoming a big issue for groomings, as a lot of the groomings are you know, jobs. The groom jobs are actually now freelance jobs. Not a lot of them are actually permanent jobs, and the writers
Oh
are
wow.
getting tired of it because every show they go to, they have to hire a freelance. A freelance is
Eso.
charging a lot of money, and
El turnover está cabrón.
yeah, and that's why now things are changing, and they're like, I think I'd rather have a permanent groom. Why? When you have a permanent groom, that groom is always watching, taking care, making sure everything's on point, you know, the times you feed the horse. When you have a freelance groom, it could be that the freelance groom doesn't feed the horses at the same time you feed your horses at home. That's already affecting your horse. That's already having a side effect. So all these riders, you know, these American riders that would also go to Europe and they would hire freelance grooms, they're starting to realize that it's better to bring the Mexican groom, the Mexican home groom, than hiring a freelance groom in Europe, because it has affected a lot of the horses, and it has affected a lot of the
Yeah.
riders, where they have a Mexican groom that they grew up with, that they trust, but they believe that there's a groom in Europe that just because they've done 20,000 shows as a freelance, they're better grooms than the Mexican. Well, things are changing too now. Now the American grooms are realizing that it's better to bring along the Mexican groom, the home groom, to these kind of shows and these kind of venues. It's changing, and that's a good thing. However, we're running out of grooms, and that's where we have to, you know, work on. We're
Have you
running out
thought
of grooms.
of starting like a school?
I have a little school already that this is where I teach my kids, my
Okay.
people, but I teach them my way, because I think it
Yeah.
gets complicated when you have people that, you know, haven't experienced these kind of shows, these kind of venues, and they want to teach, you know, people how to do the job properly. I mean, I consider myself a good person to teach Mexican grooms, because I've experienced, you know, the European soil, the American, the Southern American, and I can explain to them in an easier, better way how to do things without having to experience the bad things I experienced in all these venues and these places.
Yeah.
It's nicer, it's easier, and their what do you call it? Their character builds up. They build up a
Yeah.
lot of a confidence, and that's what we need. We need confidence in grooms, confidence in riders, and just build a good bond between the American community and the Mexican community, groom community again. I think you know, doing what we're doing is slowly going to start, you know, helping us fix this issue we have right now. You know, the running out of grooms. We're working on it. You know, we're getting there.
And I think you know, there's a space for people to right now there's kind of a void, you know, like our industry, like you said, it's suffering because of a
Yeah,
lack of personnel on many ends. You know, like
yeah,
right now, every farrier that I know that's looking for help can't find it, you know,
yeah,
because there's nobody that wants to throw down and like go shoot some horses. They
yeah,
want some, no say, no, yeah, and I don't even want to get into that because that's not my fucking, that's not my problem. I don't deal with it. I'm trying to do this over here, which is the only way to really do it with horses. And how do you explain that shit? And it's like to make it cool again. And so, like Edgar, you gotta get on the like writing some banda music about like on grooms and some like because
successful stories.
we'll do some peso
I think
pluma
that's what we're doing
versions
now.
of like
That's lo que estamos haciendo ahorita, That's what we're doing
Exacto. Sí,
now.
es lo que estamos haciendo ahorita. There's a void for sure, no? Like for all this stuff.
Sí. Es lo que estamos haciendo ahorita to bring together our influence out into the world, because how are people going to know what's up? We can only guess. If you're not in it, if you're not part of the club, you look as an outsider, you're just seeing kind of the surface level things, which I can I can relate to as someone that maybe goes into a new into some kind of new like interest. You're interested in a lot of things. I'm interested in a lot of things. We're all interested in a lot of things besides horses. And as an
Yeah.
outsider, you come in and you're like, okay, you see the surface, but you're not, as far as horses, we are in the deep water. We have, we come from the abyss of it all. So it's good that we're
Well, it's
doing
just
this.
that our industry's so cool, but you go to a horse show and there's literally nothing like the horse show ends and there's nothing going on around it. Like I remember horse show because I mean you guys also remember horse shows when you were kids. Like there was
I mean, in
fucking
Europe,
entertainment, there was singers, there was fucking all kinds of shit going on.
it is like that in Europe, man. It's the same way,
Todavía?
and it hasn't changed. Europe is the
Oh
same.
wow.
I mean,
See,
it's like
that's like the horse meccas, no?
yeah, absolutely, it is. They love entertainment. They always have music after like
So maybe that's
last
what we
class.
bring.
Yep.
Maybe we start an entertainment company for the horse shows because nobody
need it.
needs more entertainment than the grooms.
Yeah.
Oh, and everyone, the writers, everybody wants to be entertained nowadays.
Sí, y todos se juntarían, como tú dices, billionaires, trainers, grooms, shoers, todos estarían ahí. Clients, everybody would be there because at the end of the day, that's what makes
it is what happens in Europe, man. I mean, after the last class, which is on Sunday at like 5 is the jump off. It ends like at 6. So at about 9, they tell everyone to come over to a tent where they have all the grooms, all the riders, everyone's partying together, everyone's drinking, everyone's getting shit-faced. But the next day, you see them all, waking up early at 6 in the morning to feed the horses to go back to bed.
Exacto.
Yeah,
or
they
slept,
go, or they don't sleep and they go straight to the fucking stalls, the stables, and they feed the horses and they go back to sleep.
Pues los voy a limpiar, güey. No tengo nada que hacer. It's like fuck
Así
it.
se me baja la cruda.
I will shout out to Sonoma Horse Park because the last couple of shows that I've been able to go to, like on the Saturday, Sundays, they al final sí ponen, they put a band, they put some food out and everything, and they let everybody come up into the VIP. And it's because it's like also a really small, it's a nice little smaller show park. And shout out to fucking show parks. I can't tell you how much of my fucking life has been spent on places that are abandoned most of the year, It's just a fucking
shout out to the show parks and shout out to everybody that's listening in, and thank you Hugo. Man, we need to do more of these. There's just there's a lot to unpack,
Oh, there's so much more.
yeah. We'll try to do one every, we'll try to keep going every week, and maybe we'll just keep adding people to the conversation or keep trying to just because so much.
I would love to interview your brother too, Hugo.
Yeah, dude. Luis. Yeah.
My brother worked for the Swiss team. He worked for Alain Schuffe, who's a Swiss rider. Yeah, and he lived in Geneva. No, not Geneva. Elk. It's called Elk. It's in the southern part of Switzerland, like in between.
Oh, interesting.
Close to Germany and Italy. But yeah, we worked at Steve Gardot's stables, and so we've been around, man. A couple good riders, cool riders. And yeah, my brother's a cool one too. Cool guy.
I love it.
All right, bros.
I love it.
Anything else you guys want to advertise? Anything else? We good?
Oh yeah, dude, plug it up.
Just the TikTok page is called Escuela de Monta, just as it sounds. ESCUELA DEMONTA, Escuela de Monta, and that's where you can follow up what I do with kids. Again, it's my business, my place where I teach kids how to ride. I break horses, but you guys can check the process there. It's pretty cool. And the stables are mine. It's our place. My family owned. My brother and I run the stables. It's called Granja Paz Maria, Cuadra Hermano Rangel. We also have some race horses, and yeah, you guys check it out.
Nice.
All right. Well, thank you, bro. You guys have a good night. It was a nice talk.
You too, guys. Well,
Peace.
be well, man. Peace out.
too.
Bye, guys. Bye.